من مصدرها مباشرة. إذاعة الجزائر الدولية، صوتنا في العالم.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Polisario Front has reiterated its call for independence and the recovery of sovereignty over their national territory. Despite the Eid festival, the Israeli occupation pursued its attacks in the Gaza Strip, committing 4 massacres in the Strip, resulting in the killing of 41 people and injuring 102 others. The leader of the Hamas resistance movement, Ismail Haniyeh, has said that the Israeli occupation has intensified its aggressions in Gaza and the West Bank, stressing that the suffering of Palestinians is unbearable. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. Algerian and all Muslims around the world celebrate today the second day of Eid al-Adha, or the Festival of Sacrifice, one of the most important Islamic holidays. Today, Muslims commemorate the willingness of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, to sacrifice his son Ismail as an act of obedience to Allah's command. However, Allah the Almighty provided a sheep for the sacrifice instead. Eid al-Adha is celebrated with special prayers, feasting, and the ritual slaughter of animals such as sheep, goats, cows, or camels. The meat from the sacrificed animals is distributed among family, friends, and the less privileged, as Eid al-Adha symbolizes the importance of charity, community, and obedience to God. This comes while Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank are making a dark Eid al-Adha, as the Israeli occupation continues its deadly attacks more than 8 months after the start of the war. On the occasion of Eid al-Adha, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, performed yesterday the Eid al-Adha prayer at the Grand Mosque of Algiers, or Jama' al-Jazair in Algiers, in an environment of piety and serenity. Senior state officials, members of the government, and representatives of the Arab and Muslim diplomatic corps accredited in Algeria, as well as numerous faithful, also performed the Eid prayer in this religious and civilizational building. Earlier, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, sent his wishes evening on the occasion of Eid al-Adha to all Algerians, both inside the country and abroad, and to the pilgrims.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salli Allahumma wa sallim ala imamina wa habibina wa nabiyina Sayyidina Muhammad alfu salatin wa alfi salamin alayh. أخواتي المواطنات، إخواني المواطنين، كما عشنا نفحات يوم عرفة الأغر، نستقبل إن شاء الله عيد الأضحى المبارك لنحيي سنة سيدنا إبراهيم الخليل عليه السلام، ونجعل منها مناسبة للتسامح والتغافر. أتوجه بهذه المناسبة بتهانية لكل الجزائريين والجزائريات داخل الوطن، ولجاليتنا في المهجر، ولحجاجنا الميامين في البقاع المقدسة، متمني لهم قضاء هذه الشعيرة في أحسن الأحوال. كما أهني بهذه المناسبة الأمة العربية والإسلامية قاطبة، وخصوصا أشقاءنا في فلسطين المحتلة والجريحة، سائلا الله عز وجل أن يرفع عنهم الظلم، وأن يشفي مصابين، وأن يرحم شهداء فلسطين. عيدكم سعيد، كل عام وأنتم بخير. تحيا الجزائر شامخة سيدة أبية، المجد والخلود لشهدائنا الأبرار، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
The President also congratulated the entire Arab Muslim nation, particularly our brothers in occupied Palestine, praying to Allah Almighty to lift the injustice they suffer, to grant a speedy recovery to the wounded, and to surround the martyrs of Palestine with His holy mercy. The National Delegate for the Protection of Childhood, Miriam Sharfi, highlighted the achievements made by Algeria in terms of protection of and promotion of children. On the occasion the World Day of the African Child, celebrated on June 16th, she shed light on the major achievements made at both legislative and institutional levels in our country, describing them as a role model. She also hailed the major interest paid by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to childhood and national policies that regard children. The Sahrawi people highlighted demands, which is independence and the recovery of sovereignty of the whole territory of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. In an interview granted to the Sahrawi National Television, the member of the National Secretariat Polisario Front, representative to United Nations and coordinator with MINURSO, Dr. Sidi Mohamed Omar, referring to the Sahrawi question during the discussion of the Special Committee of Decolonization in its last substantive session, the Sahrawi diplomat held statements made by member states from various continents before the committee, in which they expressed their strong support for the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence, and the need to eradicate colonialism from the last colony in Africa. Regarding the possibility of reactivating the peace process in the light of the current circumstances, in the light of the efforts that the personal envoy can make, the Sahrawi diplomat indicated that the UN-sponsored peace process in Western Sahara is not making substantial progress due to obstacles imposed by the Moroccan occupation. 54 years have passed since the outbreak of the historic Zemla uprising on June 17, 1970, announced by the avant-garde movement for the liberation of the Sahara under the leadership of Mohammed Sid Brahim Basiri on June 17, 1970. The event was a turning point in the history of the Sahrawi national movement for independence, through which the Sahrawi disappeared Basiri played a pivotal role in the face of Spanish occupation authorities. And now the Israeli occupation premier dissolved the war cabinet task which steered the genocidal aggression in Gaza, a move that comes days after a key member of the body bolted the government over frustrations surrounding the Israeli leaders' handling of the situation. The move was widely expected following the departure of a centrist former military chief earlier this month. This comes while the Israeli demonstrators closed major roads in the occupied territories as part of protests demanding the resignation of the far-right government. Activists and journalists published various scenes on the X platform of the ongoing protest for the second day in a row. The demonstrations are expected to continue throughout the day and will be followed by an evening demonstration and a protest march. The Israeli settlers have stormed the Arab Milihat Bedouin community northwest of the city of Ariha in the West Bank. Asya Bekkar has more details in this report.
The General Supervisor of Al Baidar Organization for Defending the Rights of the Bedouins told the Palestinian news agency Wafa that a group of colonists, along with their flocks of sheep, stormed the Arab gathering, broke into a prayer hall and caused destruction on it. He pointed out that the communities in the Jordan Valley are under major attack by colonist gangs, adding that the occupation police and forces have tightened military measures against those communities. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers today torched Palestinian land in the village of Burqa and attacked Palestinian vehicles near the village in the east of the occupied West Bank city of Ramallah. Local sources reported that the settlers descended upon Bir al-Marj agricultural area in the village and set it on fire. Let's recall that over 700,000 Israeli colonists are living in colonies across occupied Al-Quds and the West Bank in violation of international law.
The death toll rising from the Israeli genocidal aggression on the blockaded Gaza Strip has climbed into 37,337 people. Asya Bekkar has more details in this report.
Despite the Eid festival, the Israeli occupation pursued its attacks in the Gaza Strip, committing 4 massacres in the Strip, resulting in the killing of 41 people and injuring 102 others. Moreover, at least 10,000 people are presumed dead under the rubble of their homes throughout the Strip. Meanwhile, on the occasion of the Eid festival, the Palestinian ambassador to Algeria, Faiz Abu Aita, paid a visit to the injured Palestinians who are hosted by Algeria and said he shares the Palestinian people's pain and sadness.
تشاركنا مع السيدة رئيسة الهلال الأحمر الجزائري.
We paid a visit with the president of the Algerian Red Crescent and our brothers from the War Veterans Ministry to the injured Palestinians who are hosted by Algeria to try to alleviate the pain of our people. We now know the difficult situation is for them during the Eid festival, as they watch all the crimes committed by the Zionist entity against their families and people of the Gaza Strip and the entire occupied territories. That is why we were with them to share their pain and sadness and to alleviate their suffering.
من هذه الأجواء ونخفف من مصابهم.
The Israeli aggression also resulted in the forceful displacement of nearly 2 million people from all over the Gaza Strip, with the vast majority of the displaced forced into the densely crowded southern city of Rafah.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The leader of the Hamas resistance movement, Ismail Haniyeh, has said that the Israeli occupation has intensified its aggressions in Gaza and the West Bank, stressing that the suffering of Palestinians is unbearable.
لقد أمعن العدو المجرم في حرب الإبادة التي يخوضها.
The Israeli criminal enemy has intensified the genocidal war that he is waging against our people in Gaza, the steadfast West Bank, in the occupied Al-Quds and everywhere. And here is the war entering its 9th month, and the criminal enemy pursues its murder, air raids and destruction. Now you can see the amount of suffering that our people are subjected to, especially in the steadfast Gaza. Our people are facing famine as well as bombing and rockets of the Israeli enemy. I would like to say to the peoples of our nation that the battle of the Aqsa flood was for the Aqsa Mosque in defense of the nation and its holy places.
ودفاعا عن الأمة ومقدساتها.
This came while the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths declared that the bombing of the Israeli occupation on the Gaza Strip since October 7th has transformed the besieged Palestinian enclave into a hell on earth. Griffiths said that it was impossible to provide humanitarian aid to the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip, who are on the verge of famine, noting that civilians and infrastructure of the Gaza Strip were subjected to excessive damage. The UN official also stressed that weapons continued to flow towards the Zionist entity from the United States and other countries, despite the horrific impact of the Israeli aggression on Gazans. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, has said that the Gaza Strip, which has been under genocidal Israeli aggression for almost 9 months, is the most dangerous place in the world for humanitarian workers. UNRWA said that 193 of their colleagues were killed during the Zionist war on Gaza, which is the highest death toll in the history of the United Nations. UNRWA added that their colleagues continue to work to support families and provide assistance in the context of the severe humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. The toll of the barbaric Israeli occupation aggression against the Gaza Strip, which has been going on since October 7th, reached 37,337 martyrs and 85,299 wounded on Sunday, while thousands of Palestinians are missing following the destruction by the Zionist Air Force of homes, buildings, and other infrastructure in the Palestinian enclave. At least 6 people have been killed and 19 others injured in Ecuador after heavy rainstorms triggered a landslide. The deadly mudslide occurred on Sunday in the city of Banos, the Agua Santa, in central Ecuador, according to a report by the National Secretariat for Risk Management. The agency had initially reported that 30 more people were missing, but later they said they had been located. Videos and images online showed a flood of mud and debris charging down the hillside in Banos and surging over a highway. The authorities have mobilized heavy machinery to clear the roads. The mayor of Banos, Miguel Guevara, urged residents to steer clear of treacherous roads and said authorities were racing to clear the area along the northern coast to ease the search for more victims. Banos, known among tourists as a jumping-off point for adventures in the Amazon jungle, has long been a magnet for travelers exploring Ecuador's volcanoes and craters. It is about 135 kilometers south of the capital, Quito. That's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a special program devoted to our national community living abroad by my colleague Majid Mila. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. Today's special program is devoted to our national community living abroad. Over the past 3 years, the Algerian government has paid particular attention to the national community settled overseas, taking important measures aimed at strengthening its ties with the homeland and associating it as a force of influence and proposal to the development process initiated by Algeria in materialization of the commitment of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. These commitments aim to protect the national community abroad and promote its participation in the national renewal. To do this, several initiatives have been launched towards the national community abroad to build bridges of communication with its members and provide them with the conditions enabling them to adapt to the political and economic changes that Algerians are experiencing and to contribute to the development of various national policies. As part of this vision, President Tebboune has underlined on many occasions the particular interest he puts in addressing the concerns of the Algerian community abroad and protecting its interests while hailing the honorable national initiatives of its members during dire situations.
Je souhaiterais, مع Semoula, مع le chef du gouvernement, qu'on fasse au moins une fois par an des assises de l'immigration algérienne dans tous les secteurs. Ça va de la médecine jusqu'à la petite entreprise, en passant par beaucoup de choses. Donc, vous êtes partie prenante de ce qui se passe dans le pays. Ça, c'est clair. Donc, la séparation même, si ce n'est la séparation géographique qui s'impose d'elle-même, mais moi, je ne différencie pas d'une Shabab Tanana ou Shabab Leh. Vous êtes une force créatrice. Le pays a besoin de vous, le pays est à vous. Il y a longtemps qu'on les a ignorés. Maintenant, il faut qu'ils sentent qu'ils sont partie intégrante de la patrie.
In this week, the President of the Republic is keen to meet members of the community, listen to their concerns, and learn about their aspirations and expectations, a tradition exerted during his official visits to different countries. Representatives of the community expressed during these direct meetings with the President of the Republic their willingness to adhere to the initiatives launched, welcoming this approach, among others, which puts them on an equal footing with their compatriots in Algeria. For his part, President Tebboune welcomed the strong will of the community members contributing and bringing more to the collective efforts made by Algeria in the process of overall development, hence the need to put in place the appropriate mechanisms necessary for this operation, stressing that he refuses to undermine the hopes of young people wishing to build their country's future. In the continuation of this particular interest granted to Algerians living abroad, and attentive to maintaining permanent contact with them, the President of the Republic proceeded to create the Special Envoy's position so as to take care of the national community abroad in an approach that fits with important axes reflecting Algerians' interests and priorities. He also urged the diplomatic corps to conceive methods and approaches guaranteeing the genuine and practical fulfillment of the special interest that he personally grants to the national community abroad, underlying that it's not only to be interested in the concerns of Algerian community and respond to their needs, but also to strengthen links with their country and involve them in the global development process and in efforts aimed at enhancing the place and role of Algeria on the international scene. In this week, President Tebboune called on diplomatic representations abroad to communicate constantly with members of the community by providing them with toll-free numbers and direct or electronic communication channels for optimal support of their concerns and protecting their interests. Algerians living abroad, an integral part of the nation. 3 years have passed since Algeria adopted a renewed approach, which is part of a global and long-term vision to consolidate the place of our community abroad, being an integral part of the nation. The first measure was to add the dimension of the national community to the official name of the Ministerial Department of Foreign Affairs. Among the main measures taken recently as part of this approach were the reduction in flight prices to safeguard ties with homeland and the expansion of the national retirement system to Algerian national living abroad, employees and non-employees, businessmen, and this with reference to a presidential decree relating to their voluntary affiliation to the system, in addition to the incentives aimed at relieving the burden of the remoteness of the country. The President of the Republic pledged during his official visits abroad to satisfy the repeatedly expressed request by members of the national community abroad. The government has planned in its action plan a series of measures aimed at responding to the concerns of the national community abroad in the political and associative aspects by developing mechanisms to involve them, particularly the elite, in the strengthening of national unity, in the rule of law and democracy, in the fight against the forms of extremism of which they are victims, in the development and organization of the associative movement depending on the country on the basis of a common program. According to a communique issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the National Committee Abroad, clear instructions were given to optimize the services provided by the General Directorate of Consular Affairs. The improvements include increasing staff working in passport issuing services to ensure greater efficiency and a revolution in service quality. In addition to increasing the dedicated staff, consular services have been enriched with the extension of opening hours now starting from Monday to Saturday and setting an appointment system to better monitor the influence. Biometric teams will also move to areas where the community is concentrated, far from embassies and consulates, to offer local services. A significant measure, especially during the busy summer period, will allow children of the Algerian community settled abroad to enter the national territory by simply showing a biometric identity document and a passport without the need for a visa. This measure will be in effect as of May 1st to the end of October 2024. On the economic and scientific fronts, the government is working to involve this category in the national economic development process by encouraging them to invest in economic projects and to adhere to the strategy of promoting non-hydrocarbon exports, and by training their savings through the opening of banks and branches abroad, while encouraging high-level skills researchers, teachers and experts to contribute with their know-how to training. The government is pursuing the operation to modernize and simplify consular management, such as facilitating registration and delivery of travel documents or visas and other administrative documents. It should be recalled in this regard that towards the end of last year, a conference of heads of Algerian diplomatic and consular missions was organized. The conference was endorsed by more than 100 recommendations, which were submitted to the President of the Republic, who has the constitutional power to decide and conduct the nation's foreign policy.
Hello and welcome to a new edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. Today's program will shed light on a very common and life-threatening phenomenon, which is smoking tobacco. Leading cause of death, illness and impoverishment, the tobacco epidemic is one of the biggest public health threats the world has ever faced, killing more than 7 million people a year. More than 6 million of those deaths are the result of direct tobacco use, while around 890,000 are the result of non-smokers being exposed to second-hand smoke. Nearly 80% of the more than 1 billion smokers worldwide live in low and middle income countries, where the burden of tobacco-related illness and death is heaviest. Tobacco users who die prematurely deprive their families of income, raise the cost of healthcare, and hinder economic development. In some countries, children from poor households are frequently employed in tobacco farming to provide family income. These children are especially vulnerable to green tobacco sickness, which is caused by the nicotine that is absorbed through the skin from the handling of wet tobacco leaves. Surveillance is a key factor to curb smoking. Good monitoring tracks the extent and character of the tobacco epidemic and indicates how best to tailor policies. Only 1 in 3 countries representing 1/3 of the world's population monitors tobacco use by repeating nationally representative youth and adult surveys at least once every 5 years. Secondhand smoke or passive smoking kills. Secondhand smoke is the smoke that fills restaurants, offices, or other enclosed spaces when people burn tobacco products such as cigarettes, pitties, and water pipes. There are more than 4,000 chemicals in tobacco smoke, of which at least 250 are known to be harmful and more than 50 are known to cause cancer. There is no safe level of exposure to second-hand tobacco smoke. In adults, secondhand smoke causes serious cardiovascular and respiratory diseases including coronary heart disease and lung cancer. In infants, it causes sudden death. In pregnant women, it causes low birth weight. Almost half of children regularly breathe air polluted by tobacco smoke in public places. Secondhand smoke causes more than 890,000 premature deaths per year. In 2004, children accounted for 28% of the deaths attributed to secondhand smoke. Every person should be able to breathe tobacco smoke-free air. Smoke-free laws protect the health of non-smokers, are popular to not harm business and encourage smokers to quit. Over 1.3 billion people, or 18% of the world's population, are protected by comprehensive national smoke-free laws. Tobacco users need help to quit. Studies show that few people understand the specific health risks of tobacco use. For example, a 2009 survey in China revealed that only 38% of smokers knew that smoking causes coronary heart disease, and only 27% knew that it causes stroke. Among smokers who are aware of the dangers of tobacco, most want to quit. Counseling and medication can more than double the chance that a smoker who tries to quit will succeed. National comprehensive cessation services with full or partial cost coverage are available to assist tobacco users to quit in only 24 countries, representing 15% of the world's population. There is no cessation assistance of any kind in 1/4 of low-income countries. Picture warnings work. Hard-hitting anti-tobacco advertisements and graphic back warnings, especially those that include pictures, reduce the number of children who begin smoking and increase the number of smokers who quit. Ad bans lower consumption. Bans on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship can reduce tobacco consumption. A comprehensive ban on all tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship could decrease tobacco consumption by an average of about 7%, with some countries experiencing a decline in consumption of up to 16%. Only 29 countries, representing 12% of the world's population, have completely banned all forms of tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. Around 1 country in 3 has minimal or no restrictions at all on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. Taxes discourage tobacco use. Tobacco taxes are the most cost-effective way to reduce tobacco use, especially among young and poor people. A tax increase that increases tobacco prices by 10% decreases tobacco consumption by about 4% in high-income countries and about 5% in low- and middle-income countries. WHO response. WHO is committed to fighting the global tobacco epidemic. The WHO, World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, entered into force in February 2005 and has today 180 parties covering more than 90% of the world's population. The WHO FCTC is a milestone in the promotion of public health. It is an evidence-based treaty that reaffirms the right of people to the highest standard of health, provides legal dimensions for international health cooperation, and sets high standards for compliance. In 2008, WHO introduced a practical, cost-effective way to scale up implementation of the main demand reduction provisions of the WHO FCTC on the ground. Empower. Each Empower measures correspondent to at least one provision of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. The 6 Empower measures are: monitor tobacco use and prevention policies, protect people from tobacco use, offer help to quit tobacco use, warn about the dangers of tobacco, enforce bans on tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship, and raise taxes on tobacco. WHO report on the global tobacco epidemic in 2015. The protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products requires a wide range of measures relating to the tobacco supply chain, including the licensing of imports, exports, and manufacture of tobacco products, the establishment of tracking and tracing systems, and the imposition of penal sanctions on those responsible for illicit trade. It would also criminalize illicit production and cross-border smuggling. The protocol to eliminate illicit trade in tobacco products, the first protocol to the convention, which was adopted in November 2012 at the 5th session of the Conference of the Parties in Seoul, Republic of South Korea. And with this, we come to the end of this week's program. Do join us next week for a fresh program of the Health Magazine.